Hello, boys and girls. It's Mr. Overman here. I hope you're all keeping safe and well at home. Today, I'm going to talk to you a bit about recycling. Now, we talk a lot about recycling in school and how and why it's really important. So today, I'm going to share with you one of my favourite stories about recycling, and then I've got a little challenge for you to do at home, which I hope you'll enjoy. So first off, I'm going to read you my favourite, boys and girls. It's called The Paper Bag Prince by Colin Thompson. He's one of my favourite authors. I always find his books so interesting. And one of my favourite things about his books is the level of detail in the illustrations. So as you go through, I've scanned some pictures for you to look at from the book, and I'm sure you'll enjoy spotting the different secret hidden images within them. Out past the edge of a big, untidy town was a beautiful green valley. Hidden behind its tall trees were bright flowers and bushes full of birds. In the middle of this lovely place, the people of the town dumped their rubbish. Every day, lorries went down to the end of the narrow lane and tipped out the city's leftovers. There should have been a pretty village in the valley, but instead, there was a terrible mess. New rubbish was thrown on top of old rubbish. At the bottom of the pile, dark green moss clung to the seats of cars that had almost vanished into the earth. Between the old cars, there were wildflowers growing, and trees had begun to live in the oldest corners of the dump. Nature never gave up. Wherever there was a tiny gap, something green managed to survive. Animals lived there too. Not just mice and insects, but larger creatures like cats and weasels and foxes. For them it was a wonderful place, safe from the attentions of man. The twisted, torn bodies of refrigerators pressing into the flattened frames of old beds made 100 little corridors and highways. Under an old clock, lazy dormice slept. Inside a television, a family of sparrows made their home. There was life everywhere. Even in a tiny puddle in a worn-out shoe, there were mosquito larvae watching and waiting for summer. Humans didn't like to be near the rubbish. For them it was a dangerous place with rusty metal and broken glass and rotting things that smelt of disease. In a back corner there was a poison pool where large metal drums leaked into a brown pond, and nothing, not even the smallest plant, could live. The animals were cleverer than man. They kept away from the poison pool and thrived in their man-made environment. By the entrance to the dump was a tumble-down railway carriage. Once it had been bright and new with red velvet seats and brass lights, and had run through the countryside behind a shiny steam engine. Then the line had closed down and all the carriages were taken away on long, low lorries. Some had gone to cricket fields, where they were painted white and fitted with tea machines. Others had gone to the seaside for people to stay in on their holidays. But this carriage had come to the council rubbish dump, and now it sat in the grass on piles of broken bricks. Every morning, before the first lorry arrived at the dump, the paper bag prince cycled slowly up the lane, unlocked the gate and went into the shed. He was an old man in old clothes, and he moved slowly and quietly. No one knew what his real name was. A lorry driver had called him the paper bag prince one day, and now everyone did. A few minutes after the old man went into his shed, smoke began to trickle from the tin chimney. Out of the rubbish, animals began to appear. There were blackbirds and a crowd of chattery sparrows, and some mornings a shy fox. Now and then a small dog and even a brown rat appeared from the ugly jungle. When the stove was alight, the old man came back out and sat on a chair by the door. Out of a paper bag he brought food. The cats came straight over and rubbed round his legs. The birds hopped onto the back of his chair, where they could keep an eye on the cats. The fox crept up, crawling flat on the ground like a sheepdog. The dog, which didn't come often, was the most nervous of all and kept well back. "Come on, princess," the old man said softly. The dog put her head on one side and stayed where she was. She was very thin, and when he threw her food, she ate it as if she hadn't eaten for days. But no matter how hard he tried, she would never come any closer. By the time the lorries began to arrive, the animals had vanished back into the rubbish. All day long, lorries came, tipping black bags and broken bits of houses into untidy piles. Seagulls gathered to fight and flap over the mountains of new bags. The old man poked through everything. He collected wood for his stove and old clothes to wear. He smoothed out old paper bags and piled them up inside wardrobes. Next to his shed there were 12 wardrobes, all jammed tight with thousands of paper bags. That was how he got his name. People seemed to throw stuff away for no reason at all. His carriage was full of last year's radios and beautiful coloured bottles. He had 87 odd shoes, 14 video recorders, and 19 TV sets. But he had no electricity, nor any wish for it. One day, the lorries stopped coming. The paper-bag prince sat on his seat in the summer sunshine. A skylark was singing high in the air above him, and along the lane it was silent. There was no thundery rumble of heavy lorries approaching. There was nothing, just the skylark. It was wonderful. Perhaps it's a holiday, he said to no one in particular, but it wasn't. He leaned back in his chair with his face tipped up towards the warm sun, and soon was fast asleep. At lunchtime, someone shook him awake. "Hello," said a young lady. "What? Huh?" said the man, coming back to life. "Who are you?" "I'm Sarah. I'm from the council." "Where are the lorries?" asked the old man. "Well, that's why I'm here," said Sarah. She spoke loudly and slowly as if the old man was an idiot. "There's no need to shout. I'm not an idiot." "Of course you're not," Sarah shouted. "The rubbish dump has been closed. We're going to burn all the rubbish in a new machine." At last, thought the old man, and said, "Well, what about this place then?" "It's yours again," said Sarah, handing him some papers. "The council don't need it anymore. You can have it back." As the car drove off, the paper-bag prince stood there with a big grin on his face. It had been over 40 years since his farmhouse had burned down and they'd taken over his farm for a rubbish dump. They had put him in a council house and paid him quite a lot of money, and every day since then he had come back and watched his land suffer. Now it was over. His back stopped aching, and his eyes grew bright as he felt a great weary weight lift from his shoulder. In 3 weeks' time he would be 70, but in his heart he was 25 again. He locked the gate and did a little dance on the tired earth. His heart sang and must have filled the air with his happiness, because one by one his animal friends came out of the dump and watched him. Even the little dog peered out from the shadows of a dustbin. He walked around his kingdom, followed by cats. At the back of the valley, the path was overgrown with brambles. No one had been there for 40 years. Soon it would start to look green again under the last of the rubbish and disappeared under grass and bushes. The paper-bag prince climbed up into an old lorry. He kept a little camping stove there and all the other things he needed to make a pot of tea. "I should really be drinking champagne, I suppose," he said out loud, "on a special day like this. Never had champagne, though. I wonder what it's like." The grey cat couldn't tell him. She'd never had champagne either. When the paper-bag prince had put all his things into the railway carriage, there was hardly room to move. "We'll get another carriage," he said. He cycled down to the town, and a few days later a long lorry and a big crane arrived carrying a blue carriage with a number painted on one side. The crane lifted it off next to the first one so that the corridors joined up. "We still haven't got enough room," said the paper-bag prince to all the other cats who seemed to have moved in with him. The next week the lorry came back with a third carriage. "Now we've got enough room," said the old man. "All you need now is an engine," said the lorry driver, "and you'll have a train." "A train?" said the prince. "It's not a train, it's a palace." The lorry driver and the crane driver laughed at the old man. They thought he was mad to want to live on a rubbish dump. But he knew he had found paradise. As summer passed, the wild hedges around the dump got taller. The grass grew across the road until it was almost buried. No one ever came up the lane. The poison pool kept them away. Yet 2 weeks after the lorry stopped coming, the first green leaf sprouted in the dark water. Nature was healing the gentle fields that man nearly killed with his rubbish. Autumn came and buried the rubbish under a coat of soft brown leaves. Later, snow came, and the old man sat snug in his train with his warm stove and his animals. Sometimes, when the night air was filled with the dark frost, the fox came into the carriage and lay down beneath the stove. Inside the kettle, a hedgehog slept away the winter. They were all warm and content, and the rest of the world was miles away. The days got shorter and shorter. It was nearly Christmas. The old man walked through the trees towards the old lorry. He had forgotten to shut the cab door, and the seats were covered with snow. As he climbed into it to brush it out, something jumped up out of a pile of leaves. It was the little dog. With no new rubbish to scavenge through, she had grown even thinner and was too weak to run away. "Come on, Princess," said the old man. "There's no need to be afraid." He put her inside his coat and carried her back home. He fed her and brushed her and tucked her up in his bed. More snow fell during the night, but in the morning the sky was blue from side to side, and the thin sun shone down on the best Christmas the Paper Bag Prince and the little dog had ever known. And that's the end of our story. I think it's a wonderful story, all about the healing power of nature, and just goes to show what can happen if you have somebody who can care for the environment. I always remember, shortly after the first time I read that story, I saw an advert on the TV, which I'm going to share with you now. It's about a boy who scavenges around his natural environment to make something. So we're going to watch the advert now, and then I've got a little challenge for you to do at home. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to make your own football out of plastic bags, like we in the advert. And for this, all you need is some old newspaper, some string, scissors, and some plastic bags. The first step is to find a piece of newspaper and scrunch it up so it's about the size of an orange. The next step is to find a plastic bag, and it can be any type of plastic bag really, and put the newspaper inside it, into a corner, and wrap the bag really tightly around. So I'm doing a few twists there, and when I've done a few, I'm going to turn the bag inside out and go over again. And you want to do this as many times as you can. So once you put your bag around, the first bag around the newspaper, try to make sure it's as tight as possible with no air in between and no lumpy bits. Once you've done that once, you're going to repeat that process with as many plastic bags as you can find at home. The more plastic bags you've got, the better. So when you get to the stage where it's quite difficult to tie your bag around the ball, that's when you can start using string. So Cut a few lengths of string and tie it around your plastic bag ball. Now, don't worry if your ball looks a bit funny shaped at the beginning with some bits sticking out. You can get that to look nice and smooth by adding another bag. Similarly, with the excess string you've got from tying it up, if you snip that off, you'll keep a nice smooth surface, and the extra bits of string you cut off you can use later as you carry on building. So we're going to repeat that process several times now with lots of different bags and keep tying with string after each. So the best thing about this football is that it can last you a really long time. The final stage is to wrap one last plastic bag around it. You can use a colourful one if you've got one and you'd like to make your ball really nice and decorative. And once you've wrapped the bag around as many times as you can, tie around the ball multiple times with string. Try to make sure that there are no loose bits of plastic bag poking out, no handles sticking out between different parts, and try and tie as many knots as you're able to. That'll make sure your ball lasts a really long time and is really secure. The best thing about this ball is it can be used in the garden, at home, or even in the playground when you get back to school. And again, if it breaks or it should ever come loose, all you need to do is retie the string and there you have it. So I hope you enjoyed my story about recycling and learning how to make a plastic bag football with you boys and girls. I'll put the instructions up on the website if you want to have a go at home, and I'd really like you to send some pictures in of any plastic bag footballs you do make at home to the website email address, which will be on the website too. Take care, stay safe, and we'll see you